Okay, in theory, I am all here, and in theory, we will be able to hear. Fortunately, the hail that was making a whole ton of background noise seems to have stopped for now. So let's hope that continues being the case. Um, Hello, everyone. Happy Saturday. How is everyone doing? I'm
Chilly
just
here in Chicago.
chilly in Chicago. It's a little chilly here, here in Ollantaytambo also right now. As noted, it was just hailing moments ago, and
We've just had snow.
no, happy, happy.
I just got coffee just now.
Oh boy, this is definitely one of those never enough coffee days. Um, as far as I'm concerned. Saturday, is it? Is this Saturday? Is that where we are? Still in October? Is
I
it?
envy those who can caffeinate.
Is it still 2020?
Sadly, yes.
You know, right?
Although maybe it would be worse if this was the same shit in a different year. Like if it was 2021 and it was still like this, that would be worse.
Well,
The year.
Don't tempt fate.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, we have a rule. We don't tell 2020 about anything that we're thinking. We're
No,
like,
Yes.
quiet.
we do not. We do not give it. We do not give it any trouble. So yeah. So this is the part where we're waiting for everybody to join in. Where it's not actually even 2 o'clock yet, and we're going to give kind of 5 minutes latitude. So yeah, big fun. So hello and welcome to the new studio, which I think shows a little bit more space. And that kind of thing gives us a little bit more in terms of spreading around type options, still admitting people to the meeting. And yeah, there's definitely not going to be enough
Words.
yeah, right, words.
I tried to tell my partner that I had turned the coffee machine on, and I said, I remembered to press play. And then I'm like, oh,
exactly.
press play on the coffee song.
Press play on
Yes.
the coffee. I know.
Press play on the coffee song.
And coffee grows 20 kilometers from here, and I still feel like there isn't enough.
I need a coffee IV.
I'll bring you some soap, Jen. I'll bring you coffee soap.
Ooh, yeah.
Coffee goes right by on the road outside my office window, so I'll show you around the
It looks like Dan doesn't have enough neurons for everybody for today.
Yeah, Dan, why did you not bring us enough neurons? We were counting on you to, you were on neuron duty. I didn't tell you that because I lacked the neurons to coordinate to that level. So.
I need neurons for my ball of fat that's walking this frame of chalk covered in wet meat.
Yeah. Yep.
So when this class is over, will you still get all of us together so I can hear things like that again? Because that's the quality internet I'm here for.
Well, so
Yes.
as we are settling in fully and getting everything situated in the new space and all that kind of thing, I'm going to be able to leave more things set up, right? So I'm going to have a spare laptop. Eventually, there's going to be a spare laptop and computer set up in here, and it's going to be, we're going to have backup camera setups and all that kind of thing. One of the big ideas is that the video studio is kind of always set up, and as if it's reality TV, people are going to be able to walk in and say, "Oh my God, I'm having this kind of day," and talk about all that kind of stuff. So that's part of the virtual tourism game plan, is to be able to have there be things that people can do that are in that vein, and do more sort of ask me anything, social live streams and all that kind of stuff. So,
I was wondering maybe once we are all alumni, we could have alumni spin-alongs so we can all still hang out and yak.
We absolutely can do that. And yeah, in a perfect world, I'm going to be able to have a dedicated computer that is going to be able to leave a meeting room up 24/7, right, for drop-in stuff and everything for people who are, qualified.
You could
Uh,
do it through Discord.
yeah, yeah. Discord is a good and functional way to continue chatting and doing all that kind of stuff. Um, but yeah, with really high quality internet and all of that sort of thing. Those are in the long range game plans and whatnot. At some point, I'm probably going to have to like go to Cusco and buy some more computer hardware and all that kind of thing, unless I end up being able to delegate that, which would be okay. I would be all right with being able to delegate a few more things like that. That wouldn't actually entirely suck. But not there yet. So we're still given a few minutes. We still have a couple more minutes of people straggling in time and all of that. So
Are the
yeah,
brands of computers there like the same stuff, or are you getting home brews, or is it basically the same stuff worldwide?
it depends, right? So like if I want a laptop, they're mostly going to be the same stuff worldwide. Um, but but depending on, it might be cheaper in some cases for me to actually just do my own home build for the specs that I want, because it's mostly lower end computers that come in, and higher end computers are really expensive. So, I lean a little more towards building my own, just because I can get what I want. Right, right. To say agate, right. um, so yeah, I got a Seagate external drive, and someone told me that it was, they were like, yeah, and y la marca es Se Agate. So, the brand Se Agate is how Spanish works and everything. So, yeah, yeah. So yeah, this is we're getting there on the office space. It's not 100% set up yet. Well, actually, I have a separate office that's going to be for officing in, and then this is the video recording studio and workroom. And there's eventually going to be a table kind of over there on that wall that you can't actually see right now. On the wall, on the wall that's over there. There will be a table that's going to have my really good drum carder on it, so I'll be able to do some fun drum carding stuff too. And I'm going to bulk order like a ton of different interesting materials like silk and whatnot from elsewhere in the world, because it doesn't grow here, and I'll be doing some interesting things and making some fun stuff for for playing with. So I'll have my whole studio set up for the whole range of different things. At some point, I'm probably going to get a spinning wheel, or build one, and all that kind of thing. So this is going to be the main studio room for doing that kind of stuff. I'm going to install better task lighting and so forth. Although I think this lighting right now at this time of day, the general natural lighting is pretty good. Dale wants to know, did I find my shampoo? Yeah, I found my shampoo. Well, actually, Jocelyn found my shampoo. She knew right where it was, and she had told me, and I had just Uman Pawa, Uma is head, and Pawa is like the wind took it, something that's the wind blown. So, yeah, I just couldn't remember what she told me. But so right now we have right now we have uh, right now we have one room that is completely full of like pillows and comforters, just because Jocelyn, who is the boss of this facility, decided that would be fun to do with all of the stuff that came from the old place. We're just gonna make one room that's just blankets and pillows and comforters, and maybe
The
we'll
cuddle room.
Right, exactly. She's like, and if we ever get to a point where like where the move is just stressing us too much, just go into the pillow room and fling yourself into the pile, right? Like, and I'm like, that's a good call. That is a good call. This was clearly an excellent hire.
Yes, definitely. Well done.
We're gonna have the pillow room for now. Until further notice, we have the pillow room. There's another
Check
room that
before you fling yourself on top of somebody hiding in the pillow fort.
Oh, Does that mean you have to leave a sock on the doorknob of the pillow room?
Yeah. Terrifying. But yeah, so I've got an office that's
Hilarious. Absolutely hilarious.
I'm filthy. I'm sorry.
terrible.
Kat,
Absolutely.
you are so bad.
All right, so I think we are mostly here. So I will start by giving you a quick tour of what we've got for facilities. So I've got this desktop area and the whole thing. This table eventually is going to be larger, so come out more this way so that there is a filming area like right in here as well. Unfortunately, that table doesn't fit through the door, so we're getting a different one custom made. So yeah, so let's see, I've got some actual shelves up and stuff all over the floor still. It's kind of messy, but a few actual shelves and some cones of yarn and fiber and bags, and that's got to all get sorted and that kind of stuff. And look at this snazzy shelf, which I thought was an excellent pick for looking decorative and putting things on. Would be good for staging stuff. And then there's going to eventually be stuff on the walls and up in the high overhead type area things, and that'll be a lot of fun and real nice. As you can see, as you can maybe hear, there's some stormy type action going on outside right now. So anyway, this is our exciting view of the street where coffee goes by, and chocolate and fruit and other kinds of things that come up from the jungle. So right over that way is the view from the old place. So we're 400 meters from the old place. So 400 meters from the old place and everything. But yeah, so this is the new recording studio, as they say, and everything. I also have a yarn washing facility. Super snazzy yarn washing facility. This is a house with 13 master suites. One way to look at it. Okay. Anyway, so that's the lay of the land with where we are. So, admitting the couple of other folks, and we'll see where we're at. So, I do miss my outdoor office. And in the long run, there will be some nice outdoor spaces here as well, but they're not fully built out yet. That's Manuel's problem. He's the facilities manager and gets to do all the plant design and all that kind of stuff. So that's all happening right now. So there will be a front garden, nice one, and there will be a riverfront one, and hopefully we will also be able to go a little bit further afield with a few things here and there, like maybe do some stuff live from out and about, once out and about is really a thing again, which it isn't quite yet. Okay, so I think we are all here, or some semblance thereof for the time being. There are it looks like there are 8 people still not here who are signed up for the course, but I know we have some. We're always going to have a few folks who can only do it recorded and the whole thing. And yes, we happily are recording. So that's good. So Aramati, we are all very glad to hear that you are home, not evacuated, and hopefully going to be safe. We're hopefully nearing the end of what's been an exciting season of fires here as well for us. So, okay, let's start off with questions. Who's got questions? Kathleen said, is it useful to let you know if we need to miss a class? No, in general, it's you don't have to tell me, like, don't make more work for yourself. I just, like, if I've started the video, if I've started the session and I know I've got 36 people who are signed up, but there's only 4 there, I might think there's a technical problem or something else. But if there's 36 people signed up and I have 28 of them in the class, then I think we're probably pretty much okay to go. And Shelly says, well, if I disappear mid-class, it's because this Surface Pro is the world's fussiest charger and I'm not at full charge and can't get it to work. Been there. I was afraid I was going to have to postpone this class or reschedule today's session because it was hailing and it was so loud on the roof, because I'm on the top floor of the building, and it was so loud on the roof that my audio was absolutely garbled and unintelligible. And if it didn't stop hailing, so first I was going to just move to a different room and say, well, unfortunately, we're not in the office. But since the in-house internet is not fully set up yet, you know, that's tomorrow for further wiring. Anyway, so yeah, so let's start off with are there any questions? Oh, come on, someone's got questions. I'm not going to believe it if nobody has questions. Can I do office hours from the pillow room? Well, you know, probably by Wednesday, the pillow room will have good Wi-Fi in it. Yeah. So Aramati says, I feel like I'm at the point where I'm not sure yet what questions I have. All right, so let's recap. So we talked about basic yarn structures a bunch last week, and we're going to build on some of that. All right. And Jen says yes, and I'm going to say that I'm going to guess that is yes. Let's have office hours from the pillow room, as opposed to from here. And yeah, I did not actually manage to finish the video that I hoped to finish on spinning off the edge of the bed. So what I think I can do is I think I can demonstrate some stuff live here from the office room. So I will do that in just a moment. Beth says, I'm not sure what direction I'm spinning. Okay, so let's talk about ways to know what direction you're spinning. Let's make sure we get that one covered. So then Kat says, I'm always trying to be super comfy and lazy. And yeah, me too. Me too. Me too. Okay, so let me grab some spindles and some fiber. Throw stuff there, throw stuff here. Okay. So when you say you're not sure what direction you're spinning, Beth, do you mean you don't know what direction it's called, or that you aren't sure when you pick up your spindle which way you want to go?
I'm unmuting myself. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay, I did that little tiny bit where you can pull a little off and fold it back on itself.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been using my right hand and kind of snapping it with 1 or 2 fingers. And I've been normal snapping, like you snap your fingers. But when I folded it back on itself, it seems like I have a Z-ply when I do that.
Okay.
Which would indicate that I'm S-plying. No.
Hold on. So it's gonna depend on a few different things. All right. So when you this is gonna be hard to see with this. So let me spin a little bit of light colored fiber here. So so when you set your spindle in motion, and I'm dangling this here for the time being, and I'm just gonna join this real quick. So when you pick up your spindle, if you're using a yarn anchor, you can simply dangle it and see which way it untwists, okay? And then I'm just trying to get past the black fiber here on this because that is hard to see. So
I use a supported spindle, so I have no clue what that's going to look like.
So then if you are not yarn anchoring, then when you spiral up and you boing off the tip,
Okay.
okay, so you're spiraling up and you're boinging off the tip, spinning in a supported mode. You get this bowl. Spiraling up and you're boinging off the tip, correct?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. When you look at the way that the yarn is spiraling up and you're not securing it at all to the shaft, correct? You're just spiraling up and you're boinging off the tip?
Yes, and then anchoring it every so often.
Okay, but so when you don't anchor it and you boing off the tip?
After it's gotten long enough, then I do the...
Hold on. When you don't anchor it and you boing off the tip, look at the direction that it wraps around your spindle shaft. Okay, look at that. Are you seeing the same thing? Are you seeing what would be the center of a Z, or hang on, what would be the center of a Z, or what would be the center of an S? As it's
It would be the Z, center of a Z.
Okay, you're spinning Z.
Because it's this way. Yeah.
You're spinning Z.
Okay, thanks.
All right. And yeah, you have to keep going in that direction in order to keep spinning. Okay. So yeah, so now I'm here with, let me admit more people. So now I'm here with the kind of lazy mode, spinning in a supported mode sort of thing going on. Going off the tip and all of that. And I'm going to switch here to spinning in a suspended mode so I can show the sort of sitting on the edge of the bed posture in a moment. All right, so I'm going to yarn anchor in order to be able to do that. All right, get this firmed up a little bit more. And this spindle is a little rough still. I just want to point out, point out. This one's pretty good for pricking your finger on. So if I fall asleep, please don't send me a Prince Charming. I'm really happy with my single life now. Just let me sleep.
Just means more coffee.
So, okay, so now notice that I'm not chicken winging. I call this chicken winging. I've got my hands kind of comfortably at my sides, and or my elbows comfortably at my sides. And right here, I've got my spindle dangling in between my knees. And I can draw off to the side and I still bring my hands back in. I still bring my hands back in towards the center of my body for winding on. See how I'm keeping things kind of neutral? Let me see if I can shift the camera position here a little bit. And then I'm resting that again on my knee while I wind. And let me see if I can tilt this down. Okay. So now we're going to do the headless Abbey view. All right. I'm just joining. But see how my shoulders are neutral? And I'm spinning right, you know, everything just sort of drops right in here. And I'm not like I'm not like doing these really long reaches. So one of the things that makes this possible, go as slow as I can, is this thing where I kind of itsy bitsy spider to pick the spindle up and have it come to my hand, okay? So when I'm yarn anchoring, you can put twist in. I've got twist in, and then this is dangling. And now instead of reaching down, I pinch right here, okay, I pinch, and then I control my fiber supply with my little finger and my ring finger. And then I use the social finger, which is the one that remains, you know, the social finger, deployed in many parts of the world in a standard maneuver. So I remember I'm pinching the twist here with my pinching fingers. And then I've got my fiber supply controlled, and I'm going to deploy the social finger. I'm chicken winging here so you can see this in front of me. So don't chicken wing in general. Like normally I would just be here, but I'm chicken winging so I can show this. So I'm going to use the social finger in the standard USA maneuver, which looks something like this. All right. So everyone can laugh. It's allowed. So yeah, so I'm pinching, I'm controlling my fiber supply loosely, and then I deploy the social finger. And now I can open up, right? I've got that around there. I've got that around there, and now I can hook my thumb under, and then itsy bitsy spider all the way on up, and then that brings my spindle up. Now I can grab my yarn anchor half hitch, and I can untwist a little bit, and then that lets things pop off. That lets that pop off. So now I'm going to come here and I'm going to wind on. And when I have about a shoulder width of yarn, I'm going to slouch. And when I have about a shoulder width of yarn here, that's when I shift my grip and start spiraling up the shaft. My fingers up at the tip. When I feel the yarn, I shift my grip and I execute that half hitch maneuver, which could execute a little bit more smoothly on this very sharp spindle right now. And I'll put on 2 sometimes if I'm unsure that it's going to hold. So then, okay, so now I'm back here, and that is my sneaky method for picking the spindle back up when it's too far away. And I might do that for a number of reasons, right? Like I might want to do that in order to get it back to my hand to give it another flick and get more twist going. Notice how once I've got that twist going, right? Once I've got the spindle going, and I've got a lot of twist piling up in here, I've got a lot of twist piling up in here, and I want it out here in my drafting hand. Well, if I move this forward hand, my spindle controlling hand, back and forth along there, then I can spin out to the side, all right? So we're doing this body mechanics thing. So I'm gonna just set that in motion again. Yep, and I'm coming out like this, and I'm bringing lots and lots of twist out to the side, okay? And this is covered in detail in the drop spindle cotton videos on YouTube, but I think I actually kind of like what I'm seeing in this video a little bit better. So now what I've got on here on my hand, not all of it is fully spun, right? I'm still controlling. Now I want to point out I'm not clenching with any of these fingers. This is still very gentle. Now I'm going to grab right here and I'm pinching these half hitches, and this spindle again, unfortunately, is a little bit new and hasn't broken in fully, so I had to reposition the yarn, the wound on yarn. You put this over here, hopefully in range, so you can see the winding on happen. trying to go slow. Make this as visible as I can. I'm still learning the new studio. Oh, look, so in here is where it starts to get inconsistent. Can you see that? Like right in here. So I don't like how that is. So I'm going to wind that off to micromanage it further. And then I come on up here and then I'm putting on my half hitches, right? I just pricked my finger. Again, reasons why. Reasons why I never believed that fairy tale was about a spinning wheel, because I had pricked my finger on this so many times. So yeah. So when I itsy bitsy spider, right? So pinching, controlling fiber supply, social finger. Now I can let go, and then hook and hook and hook and hook and hook, and that makes that figure 8. Okay. All right, so now I wanted to tweak and tune a little bit in here. So I'm going to set this in motion again. And look, here's a slub. That is the technical term for a not super consistent piece of yarn. So now I'm going to, oh, look, here's another one. I'm going to untwist a little bit, pull that out, and then I let the twist come out into it. Untwist a little bit, pull that out, let the twist come into it. Now the spindle has actually hit the floor. All right, I'm coming up here. Now it's breaking in a little bit, and I'll come over here to show my winding on methodology up close. So look at how I've got that figure 8 on there, right? But now it just pops right off. Okay, and now I'm coming up, and now I'm going to yarn anchor my half hitches. And again, I've got this kind of around a hand's length of yarn. I've got moving hands, so there's some wounds on it, you know, but I've got that hand length of leader yarn. So now I can set this in motion, and I can go and I can short draw this at the same time. Is there a reason to not hold the fiber with thumb and pointer figure and figure 8 around the social and pinky? No, if that works for you, that's absolute. If that works for you, that is absolutely fine. I just standardized the way that I did so that I had an amusing way to present this and tell people in the developed world how to do it and that they would remember it, right? I needed to kind of standardize it for teaching purposes. So people do it in lots of different ways, but people remember what they laugh about. They remember things that are a little bit naughty. And so I needed to standardize a teaching trick for it. So no, there's no reason. In fact, here, a lot of people will do this. I don't like that as much because you don't get as much yarn. So all of that. But so yeah. So anyway, so okay. So now I've talked about my setting it in motion, and it's dropping in front of me, right? And keeping my shoulders neutral. We're looking at my body position. Now I need to talk a little bit about. My spindle holding hand. And so for that, I'm going to shift my chair around and so forth. So yeah, I'm going to secure this, and then I'm going to shift my chair and do the shoulder look.
Sorry, before you change, can I ask something?
Yes.
Can you only do long draw in that way?
No, absolutely not. And that's what I'm going to demonstrate with the shift in position.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Hopefully. All right. So now in this position, you should have a better view of my spindle hand. Let's try and get this. I loosely tested this, but not as much as I might have liked. So, okay, so you'll be able to see the spindle holding hand a little bit better once I have some more yarn going. So I'm gonna set this in motion, and the spindle is going. Okay. And I want to point out, as I'm doing this, that here I am short drawing, right? You see the short drawing? I can still bring this up. I'm still setting this in motion. And now I let that slide over my hand, okay? Inside, there's the routing inside the spindle holding hand. All right, so I've got my pinching hand here, and then it runs over these fingers so that these fingers can, they can keep some of the weight of the spindle from being held by the yarn. So that means that I'm short drawing here, right? I've got a, this is hard, very hard to short draw in slow motion, unfortunately. So I've got that there, and I don't actually let that out past here, let the yarn out past here to hold the weight of that until it is yarn. Does that make sense? Anyone think that doesn't make sense? Man, it's real quiet. Okay. So, all right. So now I'm going to show this. I'm going to show that a little bit again. So here is the winding on. Here's the half hitch. I'm doing more than once. I actually did two, but I'm being a little bit gentle and touching this because this is a very sharp, and I totally pricked my finger as it is, man. All right, so now I'm going to set this in motion, okay? And if I want to short draw, then I've got the situation where the dangling spindle is running over these fingers up to the pinching hand. And so I don't actually let the yarn be bearing the weight of the twist until that point. If this is confusing for you right now, don't worry about it too much yet, because this was an answer to a specific question, okay? But I want to point out that I am keeping fingers close together. Let's call them my smart fingers, my pinchy fingers from both hands are close together, so that I can do those less than staple length short draw methods, which so this does work for that. I don't use them that often because they're slow. So I have to have a really compelling reason that I want to be doing that with this specific spindle. And so mostly I'm not going to do those sort of short draw methods because they are so slow. And for the most part, the results that I'm going to get are not going to be substantially different if I'm using a double drafting method. We're going to come back to more of that in spinning 3 when we're talking about preparation and drafting method stuff, materials preparation and drafting methods in tons and tons of detail. So, okay, so this is for talking about the body mechanics portion of things. All right. So now let us suppose that I want to put my feet up and spin off to the side and do things like a thigh roll, which I'm told you can't do with low roller spindles, by the way. All right. And so I can come in and I'm still tweaking and tuning and double drafting, right? I can do a thigh roll. Oh, look. I can come in and I can fix that. Come in and I can fix that. What's between my hands is not bearing the weight of the spindle yet. The spindle is actually now also resting on the floor, which you can't really see. But now I itsy bitsy spider and come up. And I bring that up from the side. And I'll do this from the other, side also, from the other view. Look, I've got these slubs in there. See those slubs? Unspun parts. So pointy. All right, so I want to fix these slubs. I don't like this slub, so I'm just going to come up and I'm going to just tug a little bit of that off the side. I'm going to break this one too. Look, I've got that. I don't like it. I'm just pulling that off the side. All right. So now set it in motion. And it's out there spinning, and the spindle is off to the side. See how the spindle is off to my side? Now it's actually bouncing on the floor. I've still got a whole lot of twist. Oh, look, I want to fix this. So I come in and fix that. Oh, look, that's not strong enough to hold anything. So that's where, again, itsy bitsy spider, and I come up and I need some more twist in there to fix that. So I've got to get more twist going, and then I come up and do my double drafting stuff. So the question is, do bottom whorl? Well, I would call this a low whorl because there's still some shaft that protrudes past the bottom of the whorl, not a bottom whorl, which would be like right at the bottom. Do they pick up twist from a thigh roll in the same direction as a top whorl or a high whorl spindle? I'm trying to translate my existing understanding of direction of twist into boinging. Yeah, so they do. So I have not changed the direction of twist or the direction of the boing in this case. So if I were not securing this with a, I could be rolling it like so. If this were a very large spindle in supported mode, like the Dene people use, then I would be boinging it that way. And then if I switch hands, I need to be coming up this way for that same direction of boing. But notice that it's the same yarn and I haven't changed anything. So one of the things that happens a lot, one of the questions that comes up a lot, and let me secure this. Let me just anchor this yarn for the time being. Wind on more than I usually would, and I'm going to anchor it. Bam, and bam. Okay. So if we look at this closely, all right, that is a direction of twist, right? It's going this way. Our spirals on the shaft, right? If I turn it over, now which way are those spirals on the shaft going? This way. Same direction. Hola Marta, ¿cómo estás? Bien. Estoy haciendo clase hasta como 1 hora más.
Está preparando almuerzo, bien.
Ay, sí.
Entonces,
¿Qué está preparando?
un saltado.
Un saltado.
Un saltado con colantado, con brócoli.
Oh, wow, debe ser bonito. Yo enseñando.
¿Estás bien?
Sí, creo.
¿Estás bien con tu puerta cerrada o?
Sí, mejor cerrada para que no entra ruido de afuera. Cuando estaba lloviendo había sido muy fuerte. Sí.
Okay. Yo cierro nomás.
Ya, para ahorita. Pero no tiene que ser bien cerradito, muy fuerte. Está bien siempre, Max. So, todos dicen hola.
Hola, chicas. Hola.
So she was just checking up to see if I needed anything.
Ya, chao,
much
chicas.
appreciated.
Atiendan
Chao.
las clases.
Yeah. So very pointy. So going back to this, you can see that I have that what's on here, that the yarn that's on here slants around that spirally thing in a given direction, right? So take a note of what direction it is. I'm going to say it goes this way. This is really very hard to show. It's hard to find a good camera angle that shows it other than, so it goes, you can see Yeah, I know it goes the other way. That's why I'm not saying it goes from left to right. So you can see that it goes in a direction, right? That it consistently goes in a direction. Did it change direction? What about now? No. So it's the same. And this is something that I've had to discuss really extensively in classes a lot. Is people will say, but if it's coming at me like this, it's in one direction, and if it's coming at me like this, it's in another direction. And no, and this is complicated and confusing because the way that cameras work and mirrors work and that kind of thing can cause that to be perceived differently when we're looking at it. But in real life, twist only goes in two directions, and it goes the same way regardless of whether your whorl is up here or down here. So my stick is twisting, and if I were to secure this up here, which is a little tricky to do, but let's see if I can on this spindle, see if I can flip it over and make it go that way. Kind of go like that. All right, so now I've secured it there. All right, it still wants to untwist in the same direction, and this is still the same direction of twist. It's just a little hard to secure it to that little shaft. Ooh, there we go. It's just hard to secure it to that little shaft that is intended to be slippery. So yeah, so I actually use that itsy bitsy spidering maneuver for lots of different things. So now, yes, I'm winding on in the other direction now that I flipped this over. All right, and now it is a little bit trickier to make this yarn anchor stay on that point. So now I set it in motion down here. And here's a good demonstration for low whirl versus high whirl mode, which is high whirl mode does tend to be less stable, much faster if you don't have something that, so if you don't have like a hook that centers the axis of rotation. But anyway, so yeah, so it's the same direction of twist. So to set that in motion again, let me just build up some cop here. This is a little bit awkward. So remember, I was thigh rolling down this thigh in low whirl mode. Now I am doing the same in high whirl mode. All right. Same direction of twist. How do we know it's the same direction of twist? How do we, for certain, no question, no doubt, know that it's the same direction of twist? Any thoughts on that? My yarn didn't come apart. I was able to keep spinning. And so now, just to prove it, I'm going back to the other way, right? Now I'm going to flip this over. And yes, the direction in which I'm twisting the stick changes, but my yarn isn't coming apart. It's the same direction of twist. See that blorp, that slub? All right, I'm gonna. And it's gone. So yeah, so for my sitting on the edge of the bed posture, right now I can dangle this off to the side of my body, right? And I'm not moving my hands over to the side of my body. I can say set it in motion like that, and I can keep my hands fairly neutrally in front of me. So I might bring it over like this, still relatively neutral, to set that in motion with a finger flick, and then come up and be doing all of this stuff here across my body. Stupid unbroken in spindle. And see, I'm resting the spindle on my thigh here. I'm not stabbing it into my thigh, I'm just resting it there so that it isn't an unwieldy weight while I'm winding. Now I will demonstrate all this agility I no longer have by actually sitting cross-legged. All right, so now I'm sitting cross-legged and spinning across my body. So I can have it out here. Scoot, scoot, scoot. So I can totally slouch and be here like this, spinning. There's this convenient little divot in the floor. I'm totally slob spinning. Like I've got my hands on my elbows on my knees. And I don't actually have to make a super long length at a time to be really productive, right? So in a lot of cases, if I'm gonna be slob spinning like that, I may, and this is a case where I will do things like use a temporary cop. All right, so setting this in motion, and it kind of whirs and it goes. Yeah, slob spinning, rebel teenager attitude. All right, and so now I'm gonna just temporarily store what I'm spinning up here near the tip of my spindle, and then go back to this, and I'm not yarn anchoring. See how there's a little bit of a thicker spot there? So I'm back to my slob spinning. Oh no, it came out of this nail hole in the floor. So then I temporarily store, and then, so I can actually get a whole lot done spinning in a supported mode or spinning that way. But if I want to go back to a suspended mode, sitting on the floor, well, I'm gonna do some combining of these techniques to an extent. We come back to some of the temporary cop stuff and some other spinning classes later, so I'm going to get rid of that for now. But let me just wind on this yarn and do some posture demonstrating, since I'm already down here on the floor and I'm going to have to get back up. The temporary cop is used for temporary storage of yarn on your spindle when you aren't winding it into your main cop, and this provides speed gains in the course of spinning in shorter lengths at a time, and can provide speed gains under other circumstances as well. But we're not going to spend too much time on it today, because we're already spending more time on some of this than I meant to. All right, so anyway, so I'm building up twist. I'm building up a whole bunch of twist in this, right? In this sort of leader portion. You can probably see all the way up there. Hi, I'm down here on the floor. You can probably see that I've got a whole lot of twist built up in here. So now I can even just like park that by dropping it to the side there and just kind of putting it over to the side. Now I did a join the same way that we did in spinning one a whole lot. And now I can move that twist out into other pieces of yarn, the other yarn that I'm making. Look, I'm going to improve my posture a little bit. Now I'm moving this all the way across. And I can twist. I don't twist as well as I used to before open cancer surgery. But yeah, so then same thing. This is over there. I just threw my spindle on the floor and I can work with this stuff. And so this is something that you'll see a lot of Indian spinners do. Now we'll bring it up again, storing this. Oh no, now I need some more twist. Now I need some more twist. Let me build up some more twist. Okay, now I'm going to put that over there so it stops. And now I can come in and I can tweak and tune and do this other stuff, this other sort of kind of park and draft mode. I've parked my spindle. I've put I'm putting a bunch of twist in. Now that leadery portion is full of twists. So I'm going to park my spindle on the floor over there. And then I'm going to come up and I can tweak and tune and do all this kind of stuff. All right, so Aramati says, I'm still having a lot of trouble with joins. Is it possible to have too much fiber, too much twist in the yarn before adding fiber? I thought I didn't have enough twist, but when I added more, the twisted yarn just twists on itself and I can't get the twist to move into the new fiber. Oh, let me see if I can reach some more fiber that's a different color from here where I am on the floor. Are people able to see the yarn at all from the perspective that you're in there, or is it just the body mechanics? Okay, all right, I'm gonna scooch over here and grab some of this darker brown alpaca off the floor. All right, okay, so probably what's happening, as Kat just says, it could be about the length of the staple of the fiber and how much overlap you have going on between old fiber and new fiber in the join. And so if you can send us video or pictures, Aramati, that's helpful to troubleshooting that. Let me see, trying to get everything into the right range here. Well, hang on that until I stand back up, which is going to be an exciting feat. I may scoot over off camera. I have bad knees and no core strength because of the aforementioned open cancer surgery. Okay, so I'm going to build up a whole bunch of twist here. Yes, welcome to the floor. You live here now. You're pushing 50. You got down. You can't get back up. My mentor, the old blues man who I worked for a long time, used to do this shtick on the stage where he'd say, I'm going to get down. I'm going to get down like James Brown. And then he'd say, on second thought, I'm not going to get down that far because if I get down that far, I might not be getting back up. I'm not a spring chicken anymore. So yeah, so anyway, so all right, so now I've got this part and I'm putting tons and tons of twist into it. And I've got like this much twist. It's a whole lot of twist, all right? Here's my brown alpaca fiber on the floor. And I'm touching it. And can you see how much I've overlapped? And it's kinking up on itself. But now I've got to tug it out. And now I've got to let it go, okay? So at this point, oh yes, observe the astounding flexibility. So at this point, I've got so much twist. It wants to move out into this new fiber. But it's kind of twist locking it. See how it goes that far? See how there's more than a staple length? So now I need to give it a thin space to move into. So I kind of hold back here and then, you know, blow it in slow motion. Okay. Okay. Let me see. Just put the, all right, so you can see there's a whole lot of twist in this, right? And let me use this other piece. Whole lot of twist in the white part. I'm going to overlap that there. And see it's still kinking up on itself. I need to give it some tension for it to grab. Okay. Sometimes I may need to slightly unroll to make it draftable. I need to give it room to go. All right. So now I've slow motioned that twist into that join. But you can see that there is more than a, hopefully you can see. Focus. Focus. So am I joining perpendicularly? No, not exactly. This was a wad of unprepared fiber, so it's hard for me to call it perpendicularly. And we're going to come back to some of the tweaking and tuning of those specific joins in spinning 3. But since we've got questions about it right now, we'll go ahead and talk a little bit more about it. Okay, so to an extent, I always join perpendicularly. I don't have any comb top in any other color. I don't think. Hang on, I've got a little bit of. Some blue silk and the white wool. So I'm going to put a bunch of twist in this again. Putting a bunch of twist in this again. Now I'm going to park it over there and let me see if I can park this over here. Okay. Trying to keep this in the line of sight for the camera. Okay, so I've got a lot of twist. And I've got this comb top that's comb silk top, but a different color. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to overlay this, right? And so as long as I'm just holding it, that twist is static, okay? But as soon as I let go, that twist starts to grab. Can you see it start to grab? Okay, and then I shift and let that come. So even my quote unquote worsted short draw join starts out perpendicularly. Now, one of the things that's hard about joins is that as soon as you slow down doing them, they get less stable. If you look at this closely, hopefully you can see this is, cameras are only as good as they are. Do I always park when I make that join? I don't park when I do any of this joining stuff. Unless I want to show it taking more than split seconds. So I don't park for doing most of this stuff because, but I do for demonstration purposes because I'm, you know, so there we go. I just did the same join. And no, I don't park and I don't stop when I'm doing that. So Aramati, when you say your twist doesn't want to grab the new fiber, now let's have you turn on your camera and let me spotlight your video as soon as I get my hand out of this. So I'm just gonna break that and toss that. So if your twist doesn't want to grab the new fiber, there are a couple of things that can cause that. And the most common is that you don't have enough twist. The next most common is that you're not giving it room to do it. So let me find you in the, let me find you in here and spotlight you. Okay, I've got you spotlighted now. All right, let's have a look.
So I have, so it's all twisty on itself.
It needs more twist than that.
I've been basically when I was trying to, so like getting to that point where I'm having trouble holding on to it without death gripping.
Okay.
And Sophie,
That looks good.
to,
That looks good.
that's Sophie who's helping.
Okay, so put your white fiber on your lap or on your leg. Okay, and now drag at least half a staple length. So put that all the way, that looks good, okay. Oh, you're so helpful. Oh, the suspense. All right, let's put your fiber on your lap again. All right, go all the way to the far end, not close to the spindle end, okay? So with your pinching finger, yep, okay, now let go with your pinching finger, let go. Okay, now grab that chunk of white loosely, and pull away from the spindle, okay? Okay, now you can go in and micromanage that, but you want to give the twist someplace to go before it comes completely out. So that's looking good. That's looking good. Okay, now stop. Now stop. Let the twist come out into what you just did. Okay, there you go. That looks good. That looks good. Now, I realize that as you're first looking at it, that join is not probably the join of your dreams, right? I think we just lost your audio.
She's muted.
Oh, okay. Let's unmute you.
I think her cat might have muted her.
I think your cat muted her. I got to find you in here again and unmute you.
There, you're right, Sophie muted me, but it's better than turning my computer onto airplane mode, which I've had happen to someone I was meeting with.
Okay, so that looks good. I realize that is not the join of your dreams just yet, and that's because you're gonna have to practice it a few times. But that's how it's supposed to. That is basically how it's supposed to work.
It's way different and way better.
Way different and way better. So so to some extent, this is probably a little bit of the thing where you take your car to the mechanic and then it doesn't do the same. It doesn't do that thing anymore. But
I think that when I was putting the fiber in here, I don't need to be headless anymore. I think when I was putting the twisted yarn into the fiber that it wasn't, there was something there that I did differently that worked better this time.
I think that it's probably the distance of overlap that you gave, right? Because when I watched what you were instinctively starting to do, you were kind of it's kind of like, and this would be better if I had some tidier fiber, but I don't. It's kind of like turn this down.
Well, and I was also trying to hold the fiber at the same time. So even when I had a longer amount, I don't think I was letting it get connected as well.
Getting a little too close up in there, right? And then it doesn't have enough room. So see how there's a whole lot of twist. There's a whole lot of twist in this part, but it's not moving into this part because there's not a lot of overlap. There's not a lot of overlap room there, and there's no tension. And so you were probably just a little bit close in micromanaging it, I guess.
Well, and I was also trying to hold it before together. And I think that was just like, it didn't have enough connectivity.
Yep. You need to give it a little more, you need to give it, okay, so now take your right hand and let go, just drop it. Just drop it. Okay, now grab far away on that dark fiber and pull.
Okay, yeah. I was trying to start in close rather than
well, you
far away.
You need to give the twist enough room to travel. And this is hard to do in slow motion, but being able to do it in slow motion makes a big difference. So that looks pretty good. You're going to want to practice going back and forth. So when I do like the super intensive joins class, we spend a lot of time just joining fiber over and over again. Like you join, you spin one make, you break it, you spin, you do another, and it keeps going. But I think you have to trust the twist more than seems like an obvious thing to do. So, and I know that this is a thing. This is a thing for everybody, where trusting the twist is kind of hard. Like it just doesn't make sense that it's hard to believe that the twist is not gonna do you wrong, especially because sometimes it does do you wrong when you're first learning how to do this, right? Like sometimes it really does just jump up and kick you in the face, but you have to trust the twist, and you have to give it a little bit of room to operate. Otherwise, that's where it does. It's like a toddler, right? Like if you try and control it too much, it's going to have tantrums. So if you can find ways to direct that toddler energy instead of telling them not to have it, yep. So the twist is hard to trust in some respects because it is hard to control. But remember that I said at the outset of all of this that what we're doing here is learning to be twist masters, right? We're not just learning to be makers of yarn. We are becoming twist masters.
That's super helpful because I feel like now I have something I can work with and get better at versus repeatedly doing the same thing that isn't working.
The definition of madness, as some people say, right?
Like I had a very repeatable, not working strategy. So now I feel like I have something that I can work on, and I'm like, it's different instead of.
Well, okay, but I want to say that having a very repeatable, non-functional strategy is actually progress, and is actually a good way to work towards what you're trying to accomplish and what you're trying to achieve. Because the more that you can do something consistently, even if it doesn't work, the more likely it is that you can figure out what it is you're doing exactly that isn't working, or that somebody is able to look at that from a kind of coaching perspective can do that. So if anybody finds that they are repeatedly having the same problem, and no matter what they do, that problem persists, that's actually kind of good, because it means that you've got a persistent problem, which means that there's an evident cause for it. When you have a sporadic problem, then it's harder to troubleshoot because it's harder to say, oh, it's because of this, or make this change and it'll improve it. So, yeah, so that's real solid. So, okay, now let's talk a little bit more about some yarn structures. Did anybody think about yarn structure stuff further? Everybody make some, or did a lot of people make some yarn on more than one spindle, more than one yarn source? Oh man, it's so quiet. So quiet. Okay. All right, so everybody's got so we've got some folks with loaded spindles and all of that. Yep. So Dan, we're gonna talk about that. So you've got two yarn sources. The thing I like to do outside is to stick them in the dirt, and there's video on that should be showing, and I'm not having much luck pulling it up to screen share it. So if I can't get that to screen share, I will put it on the Discord afterwards. So I have a couple of other things. I've got a couple of tools here that I like to use that hold things, and these are some pretty snazzy tools here. So this has like a holder, and you can stick. This is made by Acreworks. And it's pretty snazzy, and this will hold yarn sources that you can stick onto these things, and it has yarn guides that you can run stuff through. And so there are things that are fun like that. And so we're going to be exploring some of these tools that are like this in some subsequent episodes. But one of the things that I actually really like about these is that I can also, depending on the size of my spindles, I can just stick that in there and have it hold. So if I am indoors, like I am right now, I can stick that in there, I can stick that in there, and I can be winding off from the end of a spindle. And although I did find the bag of spindles, I did not find the bag of spindles with yarn already on them. So I'm going to be showing some joint winding with big yarn that hopefully is going to be very visible. So this is trying to grab my hair. So this is pulling right off the end. One of the questions folks had is, but doesn't that take out a little bit of twist? And the answer is yes. But when you're dealing with reasonably twisty yarn, it's not usually sufficient to cause you a big problem. So the yarn management stuff that I'm going to show is going to be using large yarn, thick yarn of multiple colors. So I was going to say this is one of the pieces of yarn equipment that I did move to Peru with, and I also have a small one because for indoor use that solves problems that just because I can't just stick stuff in the dirt. And so now I'm going to show the yarn management winding stuff together thing that I'm going to do off of some balls of yarn with big yarn. Well, yeah, bring pots of dirt into the house. There are a number of things like that will be happening outside of, the week that we're moving. Yes, the dirt room. That's we like to call it. So why would we make a dirt room when we can just go outside? Yeah, flower foam. So there's a lot of things that you can stick spindles into. And usually just going outside tends to work out to be the best thing. But so there are various different things, and I think on Discord we're going to spend a bunch of time talking about different ways to do that. But so yeah, it can be too cold. There are a lot of reasons that you might not go outside, like if it's raining or hailing, or you don't have your full network up and running and your Wi-Fi only reaches certain places in the house so far. So here's a piece of yarn. Here is another piece of yarn. Another, definitely a word. Here is an other. So 2 pieces of yarn, 2 different colors. And I'm going to hold them together. Does everyone agree I'm holding them together? All right. So I'm holding these together. And let's try and get. Oh, the challenge is in getting everything on screen the way I want. Okay. All right. So holding them together, right? I'm just pinching and I'm going to go like this, right? See, I'm sliding my other hand, my pinchy fingers on the other hand down. Now I'm going to start wrapping. Okay. And as I do this, I'm sliding, and look how a little bit of twist is happening as I do that. Right, a little bit of twist is happening as I do this. Excuse me. A little bit of twist. Oh no. All right. There's an important thing. A little bit of twist, but I'm carrying these together and I'm wrapping them together. Now, what happens if some twist gets in there? Is that a problem? My hand is the stick of the spindle shaft. That's exactly right. So what if, as I'm doing this, so I'm keeping these like together, right? They're under even tension. So everything that's wound on here is under even tension, right? Agree, disagree? Okay, so that's agree. So so this isn't a problem for small amounts of twist, like the amount of twist we're going to get wrapping around something big like this, right? So I'm going to get 1 twist every time I wrap around my hand. Well, so that's going to be like 1 twist every however many inches that is, 1 twist every that length. Probably any structurally sound yarn is going to have enough that that's not really risky. Okay, so now I get to a point where, what happens if I get to a point where, look, this gray yarn is under a bunch of tension and the purple yarn is not. So what happens if I get to a point where I wind like that? And I've got uneven tension, yarn bubbles. So the fix for that is don't do it. The fix for that is don't do it. That's why I do this sliding my hands so that they're under tension. And then I wind. Now what happens when I get to where I've got more on my hand than is comfortable? What happens if I've got more on my hand than is comfortable? It's not comfortable, right? I stop. So what I do at that point is I take this off. I just take it off. And now I'm going to do the same thing, but not around my hand. And this is how balls of yarn are wound. So I want to wind this under tension. Now we can argue a lot about whether I'm winding it under lots of tension or whether I'm stretching it out or not. And that is going to depend on how much twist you've got. If you've got so much twist in your yarn and your freshly spun singles that it's kinking up on itself and you're at risk of getting yarn bubbles because all of that, then wind it under more tension so that you don't have that big risk. If you're not having a problem with that, then it's not a big deal. You can wind it however. You can go pretty quick, right? But remember this slide, okay? Remember this slide, that keeps things even. Now, I want you to notice too that I'm sliding and carrying this together, okay? Right? So I am carrying this together. This is, you know, if we were computer professionals, we would call this one logical strand. It has been combined into one strand that we are carrying together, okay? One strand. Why am I doing it as one? Why am I doing this winding as one like that? Okay, because if I do this maneuver where I try to keep it apart, then that is where a lot of the time I get uneven wind on right? And then that too results in a yarn bubble, okay? So don't do that. Now, I know that when we talk about conventional gringo plying, as is executed by people in the industrialized world using lots of equipment and tools, that there's a whole lot of this whole keep it all apart until the moment of truth type of thing. And then what I find happens a lot is that you get people whose plied yarns end up uneven in ways that look like this. You see what I'm saying? And you've got like scooty plied yarn and a lot of stuff. And while that can be interesting, those are techniques it's more fun to do on purpose. And so that's a big risky thing. And so for a lot of the gringo plying methods, as I like to call them, because people aren't keeping their strands under even tension and letting twist come into them under even tension, when they're not doing that. So see how, like, because these are under even tension, they twist evenly for some reason, like as if tension is playing a role in this. When they're not under even tension and twist is coming at them, then I get, weird scooty messes. All right. And so then I get inconsistent and uneven plying. So the winding of these two balls is there. So one spindle has more. There are some techniques for dealing with that, which we will talk about a little further down the road. For now, I'm going to say go ahead and break the yarn from the one spindle that has more, and we're going to work with just the ball of evenly lengthed spindles. Okay, so this is going to be a whole lot of winding, and there's going to be a whole lot of winding of all these kinds of things. So what happens if you want to make three? If you want to put three together, same thing. Same thing. What about four? Okay. All right, so now we're going to get to the point of talking a little bit about why we would ever make more than four. What are some reasons we would combine more than four strands? Showing off. And Elise says, depends if you want it cabled. Well, we haven't talked about cabling yet. Rounder yarn, strength. Okay, so these are all things to consider. So so thicker yarn from thin singles. Yep. So those are big reasons to do it. And we're going to get into, so next week we're going to talk about a lot of different stuff in terms of these structures. But for now, we're looking at combining only in one plying pass, right? Only in one twisting pass, 2, 3, or 4 singles in one subsequent twisting pass. And so all of those singles are going to have the same direction of twist, and they are all going to be combined, like I say, in a single twisting pass. So for the sake of ease right now, that's what we're working with, and we're separating out the yarn management from the twisting. And that is for the sake of ease and simplicity, because when you get to where you want to be doing the yarn management and the twisting and everything all at the same time, it gets much trickier, much more complicated, right? Because there's that much more to do. So either you need to skill up to that point and have decent equipment that makes that possible, like the like these things that I was showing, either you need to have more tools and more automation or more people involved, or you need to spend a lot more time scaling up. And so that is where we're going to get to the question of automation and what is it for. And we're going to really be pushing hard on that one starting in office hours this coming week. Automation, what is it good for? Why do we have it? Right? Advanced processes, advanced tools, and advanced teams, right? As Kat just said. So you need one or more of those things in order to do that. So so Shelley says it might help if I could clarify the term twisting pass. Okay, so I'm gonna spin a spindle full of singles, and that is one time that I'm twisting that yarn. Okay, that is one time that I'm twisting that yarn. That is one twisting pass. All right, and then I'm going to apply multiple singles all at the same time. That is another twisting pass. Okay. So Beth says, like for 6 ply, do sets of 2 and then twist those together. That is no longer called 6 ply. That is not the same structure. That is a cabled yarn structure. We're going to talk about that next Saturday. So more twisting passes is more twisting passes. So that's so that is going to be that is going to be a different structure. So so that is stuff we're getting into further down the road. It's not our different it's not our basic yarn structures stuff that we're working with. Diana says, does the thickness of your individual singles relative to each other matter? Well, it absolutely matters in the sense that you're going to create different effects if you have different thicknesses of singles that you are going to combine together in a plied yarn. So it matters from that perspective. Is it bad or not allowed or anything like that? No, it's from functionally speaking, the technique is going to remain the same. If you want to wind a double-stranded ball in that way, you absolutely can do that, but it is going to change the outcome, right? It is going to change the character of what your yarn looks like after it has been plied. So you absolutely can combine in a ball 2 or more yarns of different thicknesses, and you will get a different effect than if you combine 2 or more yarns of the same or close to the same thickness. Does that make sense? So, so a higher ply number for color control. Well, so those are yeah. So those are some yarn design choices, right? So let's say that you have and I do a class on plying for color where we do that, right? Where I have a class on plying for color where we have 2 different colors and we go using different plying we have 2 different colors and using X number of plies, X number of singles, we go from one color to the other in a sort of a gradation, right? In a progression kind of way. So we start with let's say 3. We've got blue and pink, and we start with 3 blue strands, and then we move to 2 blue strands and 1 pink strand, and then we move to 1 blue strand and 2 pink strands, and then we move to 3 blue strands, right? And so in that way, we do this progression from blue to pink. And so there are some fun color things that we can do in there. So there are reasons to do that, to do a lot of that kind of thing. So how dramatically do you want that to happen? Well, that may be a reason to do some of that kind of thing, right? But it may, but so the question of color, visual effect, texture, structure, those are things that come in at the design phase of thing in spinning 4, once we sort of understand a lot of the basics. And one of the things that happens a lot in talking about plying, one of the things that happens a lot in talking about plying is somebody will say, well, why don't you just use 7 plies to get a thicker yarn? Well, what characteristics do you want the thicker yarn to have? Well, why don't you just spin thicker singles to get thicker yarn? Well, again, what characteristics do we want that yarn to have? What are some other considerations? What are the uses that we might be putting this to? So you kind of end up going back and forth, starting at the desired outcome. We're starting with what you've got and trying to find different ways to do that. So, for instance, Maggie likes to spin really thin. So if she wants a thicker yarn from her default singles, then more strands in her ply is probably going to be a good way to get that. So there's a whole lot there. People ask a lot about the Andean yarn. Well, do they ever work with singles or 3-ply yarn, or is it always 2-ply yarn? And the answer is it is always 2-ply yarn in the traditional sense. And it is always 2-ply yarn because culturally speaking, there's also a very strong belief in the duality of things, right? So like in Quechua, if you're going to say something is one, that there's one of something, it is generally going to be a pair. It's going to be two, because otherwise it would be, there's a different word. So like hook is one, the word hook is for one, but it's always made up of two things. And so, so think of it like a pair of socks, right? Like you would have a lone sock. And you know culturally that that comes from the implication that there is a pair of socks and that there would be two of them. So if you have a single sock, a lone sock, it's not complete. It's not a complete pair. So things are worked in pairs. Things are pairs. Everyone thinks of things in pairs, and that is the cultural way of all of that. So lone one equals a half, and that's chulian in Quechua chulian. So like if Martha and I are sorting socks, she might say, "Have you seen that one? Have you seen that Julian sock? Right, the one sock, right, the lone sock." And then we know what we're talking about with that type of thing. But the same thing is true in Quechua for just about anything, right? You know. For just about anything, because things are, and especially yarn things, are going to be in a dual thing. So what you've got done when you've got one spindle full of yarn isn't even yarn, it's half a yarn, right? So it's not a full yarn until it's 2-ply. So then you don't put a third thing in there necessarily. There would be no, there are other sort of structural reasons for the weaving, but no. So culturally, there's also that value. A lot of the assumptions that are made in terms of how yarns are supposed to be structured are cultural in nature, right? So there's a lot of different stuff there. So in order to find out what your yarn is really good for, you have to see it all the way through to the use for it too. And there's probably going to be cultural context where it's in there. So I'm going to say what we want to do for our homework this time is practice winding balls from 2, 3, and 4 strands, and talk about having, and let's discuss what problems we've got with all of that. But and we'll be talking about what problems come into play with all of that in office hours, so that we can start working on some of that there. So then we'll be talking about what problems what problems you can solve with improvised solutions, and what tools and equipment maybe you want to look at for dealing with some of those problems. And then when we get to the point where we've got wound balls, Dan, that's where we're going to talk about winding skeins and different ways that works. And we're going to talk about a couple of different skein winding solutions. And I actually am going to be making some skein winding equipment here for the sake of all of that. For the sake of talking about all of that, and that being a lot of fun. But you don't have to have it. So I'm also going to teach you in office hours. If we've got enough momentum at office hours, I'll show you in office hours and then repeat it next Saturday. Otherwise, it'll be next Saturday and repeat it in the office hours after that. Depending on where things are at, I will show you a technique for making a skein for making a skein if you do it. So again, so Dan says, I was thinking about how they dye singles in Peru and wondering how you do that without breaking teeny singles. So they're double stranded. So the yarn is good yarn. It's well spun yarn. So it's wound into a double stranded ball. And then from that double stranded ball, before applying, then it is wound into a skein with the technique that I'm going to be teaching either Wednesday or Saturday of this coming week, depending on where we're at momentum wise. So there's never chulian or lone singles being dyed in a skein. They are always paired, but they haven't been applied yet. They haven't been twisted. So they dye the two-stranded skein. And this was the video that I thought I would be screen sharing, and which is apparently refusing. Oh, the refusal. So anyway, never a dull moment on that front, right? So also spin better singles. Well, singles are only as good as they are, but after some practice, you can get to where they're pretty good and they hold together really well. But there is some more structural stability that comes from them being a yarn that has not yet been twisted, but has all of its components with it. Does that make sense? So it's got all of its component pieces. It's a whole yarn, but it hasn't been through its twisting pass. It's a pair of yarn in that context, in that sense. And then as far as when we get to actually plying, when we get to the actual putting in the twist part of it, Mary Ellen says, ply from the skein or rewound. So plying from the skein has an advanced degree of difficulty. So I generally don't teach people to do that early on because there's a lot of risk in that. So we're going to, in the Andes, people in Chinchero spinners, the town that I grew up in, will ply directly from the freshly dyed skein. And that is like walking out onto the stage, doing like complicated dance maneuvers. There's intimidation involved in it, right? Because it is very hard to do. Everybody else rewinds. So pretty much only Chinchero people do it, and it is only and it's really a show off. Everybody from Chinchero, the party line we're supposed to tell you is it saves us so much time over rewinding it into a ball. I mean, we let our children ply from balls. That's the party line we're supposed to tell people. But the truth is there's always a little bit of yarn management finagling towards the end of plying from the skein. It's a high degree of difficulty. So you have to be willing to be detangling super high twist, double stranded yarns. And if you're not, I wouldn't attempt to do it. Dan says, I lost an entire skein trying to apply from a skein. I am not a Peruvian spinner. Like I'm saying, Peruvian spinners who aren't from Chinchero don't do it because the truth is it's stupid, right? The truth is it's not, like, why would you do that? To show off. So that's all of it. So yeah, so we're not going to be doing it. So if you have wound a bunch of double-stranded balls and you would like to attempt putting twist in the opposite direction, feel free to do so. But I want you to focus a lot more on the winding between now and office hours. And then at office hours, I expect we're going to be talking about problems that people have in the winding and how to troubleshoot those. And we're going to be, if we've got a few people who are like, okay, but then I went to ply and I got to this point, that's cool too, because then we're going to talk about that. And I don't mind at all if some folks have managed to find some problems with that and have some questions to build from at the office hours point in time. But we do want to also have some yarn that has not been plied yet by the time we get to Saturday. Oh boy, it's getting windy out there. So we want to spend a bunch of time on all of this. If you have a wheel, you can use that wheel. We are going to be talking about wheels and wheel mechanics in in the fourth week of this class. This is the second week. So in the fourth week, we're going to be talking about that. And so, so if you want to wait for that so that we can talk about the wheel versus spindle stuff, that's fine. But if you feel ready to bring your wheel into the picture, then no problem from my part doing that. Except that we don't want to have a whole bunch of people who are still working with spindle saying, but wait a minute, she's got a wheel and I don't, and that kind of thing. So so with the understanding that we will be talking about the wheel stuff in week 4, it is absolutely fine with me if you use a wheel at this point if you already have one, but you do not need to have one, and we will not be addressing wheel specific questions until week 4. So Dan says, so before I even start, I can see that winding off high whirls, I'm not going to have as much luck with the stick it in the ground or similar method. Any thoughts? Yes, the big thought that I have at that point is there comes Ellen, put the spindles in different containers, like shoe boxes, etc. One of the things I have also done is to take a cardboard box. And I don't have, how do I not have a cardboard box freshly moved? And poke and poke holes diagonally. So if we were talking about boxes, cardboard boxes, here is this box of push pins that I do have for some reason. And I'm just going to empty the push pins out of it for now. Okay, so I would poke a hole like here and here, right? So that I'm going diagonal and diagonal. And then I can stick my spindle in going all the way through that and then coming out the other side. And then that way it doesn't matter. How long those are. Usually I can find a box where I can do that diagonally and make those stick in there. And then that's a pretty good way to do that. So then, okay. And now we get to this other whole cultural thing, right? Where we've got now I'm musing about building a simple something with a free spinning eye that you could hang a spindle hook on. Yes, so now we are looking for the tool-based solution. Now we are adding the layers of complication. And this is a classic hallmark of more heavily industrialized cultures as opposed to less industrialized cultures. As less industrialized cultures are commonly going to look for the simplest possible solution, and more industrialized cultures are going to look for the more complicated but fine-tuned solution, right? So I wonder if we could build some sort of a thing that solves this problem. And then so that's really interesting. I'm not saying one is inherently superior by any stretch of the imagination, but I am saying that depending on the availability of different things and different mass-produced goods and different technologically produced things, components, pieces, parts, you may find it more challenging to build the perfect thing that does it. So what if I don't have a ready source to buy things that are manufactured swivels? I might have a cardboard box anyway. Actually, another real factor is that we mostly didn't move in cardboard boxes because there's not a lot of cardboard boxes here because cardboard boxes tend to be saved for the specific things that come in cardboard boxes, and you use bags and textiles more often than you use other stuff. So mostly we moved in large sacks. But yeah, so this is why Spinning 2 has this focus on what sort of equipment, because when we get to this point, this is the point that we hit in spinning, right? This is the point that we hit in spinning where almost across the board, things really diverge from, things really start to diverge and split between, is there a procedure for this? And could there be a tool for this? And I am really not trying to make value judgments as to which one is superior. They're just different, right? Is there a tool for this? Is there a tool that solves this? Or is there a procedure that solves this? And like cooking, we could say it's the same thing. Like we have the same discussion about cooking, right? Peeling potatoes. How do you peel potatoes? Who here wants to tell me how they peel potatoes? Oh, come on. Somebody wants to tell me. Oh, Shelly never peels potatoes. So you eat your potatoes peel on. Leave the skin on. Let us suppose peeling your potatoes is not optional. How do you do it? Sasha uses a peeler. So the peeler is a single tasking device that is designed for peeling potatoes. Okay, so you'd like to peel with a paring knife. Okay, it also peels carrots. It could potentially peel cucumbers too, right? A few other things. Yeah. Okay, it also all of that. So somehow, so Shelly says I'm excellent with a chef's knife, but somehow awful with a paring knife. And then Cami says I boil them and pull the skin off when they cool off. I cut myself too many times with a peeler. That is also a classic Peruvian method. Scrub them, peeler used for many things, with a knife because my dexterity sucks and I always catch myself with a peeler. So okay, so I actually bought a couple of vegetable peelers because I like to use vegetable peelers to make shaved vegetable material for some things, right? Like so if I'm making like shaved pieces of something, so like that's, so I actually have peelers for doing that, right? And then we had a whole discussion about peelers and not peelers, and I personally like to peel potatoes with a paring knife. Martha prefers to peel them with the same large chef knife that she uses pretty much across the board. And she's very good at it. I'm less good with the chef's knife, so I bust out the paring knife and use that. She says it's too small to get good control over it. So all of that, but nobody here likes to use the peeler other than me for making shaved things. And it's not that Marta has smarter hands; it's that she's got a lot of practice peeling potatoes that way. So there's all of that, but nobody thinks the potato peeler, the vegetable peeler, is even worth like keeping readily accessible in the kitchen. Like, you know, okay, we're gonna bust it out for the occasional times that Abby is gonna make like scalloped potatoes, like she did that one time. So that's been one time in a year and a half. Yeah. So that's it's very interesting. And yet at the same time, I know lots of other people who are like, I would not even consider making scalloped potatoes without a food processor. So now we get into tricky situations, right? So, you know, we get into tricky situations on that. And so Dan says, that's interesting because in spinning, I default to tools, but in cooking, I tend to default to the, why do I need a tool? Yeah. I feel bad for the women who made latkes before food processors. And Kat says, I've never owned a food processor and wouldn't even know why or how to use it because too many things to clean, and that's legit. But let me tell you, you know what? Like during the span of time, ooh, thunder, it's gonna start raining again here soon. So during the span of time when there was absolutely no mail and no peanut butter in Peru and the whole thing, you can make peanut butter in a food processor. You cannot, it turns out, make it in your blender because it heats up too much and the potato and the peanuts partly cook. And it's not great for the blender either. I wouldn't even have tried it if I didn't have 2 blenders, really good blenders. And I did manage to stop short of actually doing it. So food processors are tricky, but I would have absolutely bought a food processor to make peanut butter. I absolutely would have. But yeah. So then food processors are tricky for latkes. It's too easy to go too far. Blenders. So now we had this discussion about mashed potatoes, right? So we had this discussion about mashed potatoes and the whole thing. I bought for myself a boxed set of assorted kitchen tools that had a wide variety of things, and it had a potato masher in it, and everyone's like, no. And so then there was a whole discussion about whether or not mashed potatoes can ever be made in a blender, and whether or not you're supposed to have puree of potatoes that is perfectly smooth or not. So, okay, this is all relevant to the yarn thing, because in some cases, you really want your yarn, your texture of your yarn, to have that that slight inconsistency that tends to appear from doing large batches of things by hand without a device or apparatus to make it more readily consistent. And in other cases, you get a more consistent result, not from a machine, which is fallible, but from doing things exactly by hand, pristinely and perfectly, specifically the way you want, right? And almost across the board, you will find that if you have two spinners, you have two different approaches to doing the same task and two different preferences, and that only goes up from there. If you have 100 spinners, you may find that you have 3 spinners that agree that agree for the most part on process and on outcome, on desired outcome, and all of that kind of thing, right? But odds are good that if you have 100 people who make mashed potatoes and 100 eaters of mashed potatoes still, and they're all, so if you have the same 100 people and everybody makes mashed potatoes and everybody eats mashed potatoes, odds are good that there's going to be a limited number of people who are going to say, I hate her mashed potatoes, I'm not going to eat them, they're no good. Right? Like you got to be really extreme. You got to be like really picky to be like, no, you know what? This is an outlier condition. Those mashed potatoes are no good. Absolutely not. I draw the line at mashed potatoes made in the blender. You see what I'm saying? So for most cases, you're going to find that that good enough is good enough. Oh, I draw the line at adding mayonnaise. Well, you know, there are dishes that could be made with mashed potatoes that would involve mayonnaise that I would absolutely eat. But for conventional mashed potatoes, no, I wouldn't put mayonnaise in conventional mashed potatoes. What about from powdered potatoes? Well, so my dear friend Aisha sent me. She brought with her at New Year's a bunch of gringo food that there's no way that I would ever have brought for people, because she's like, no, you know, we have to show people the reality of life in the U.S., Abby, and you're cherry picking, and you're not gonna bring people some of this stuff. But some of those mashed potatoes have been found to be satisfactory but strange of texture in the same way that that mashed potatoes from the blender might be. Anyway, but yeah, powdered potatoes. Okay, we can see the appeal. My point on all of this is that to an extent, the outcome that you want will inform the process that you prefer to use. To another extent, the process that is tolerable or preferable to execute will inform the outcome that you are going to get, and that is all going to come together to be about your personal preferences, right? And part of the point of spinning 1 through 4 is to make it safe to have personal preferences, right? So that's a lot of convoluted sort of metaphor and simile to talk about the fact that we are not all going to have the same objectives in plied yarn. We are not all going to like the same results, and we are not all going to like the same processes. And the only reason that we care what somebody else likes is maybe they have a process that we would like if we tried it. Maybe we do like mashed potatoes with the skin on. Maybe we don't. Maybe we, but so is there one true way, right? No. So I want to go through all of this to make sure that we're all on the page where it's safe to like what we like, right? And at the same time as it's safe to like what you like, it's safe to talk about your opinion and say, I like mashed potatoes with no skin on because it feels funny on my teeth. Or for somebody to say, well, I like mayonnaise in my mashed potatoes. Or for somebody to say, for somebody to bring out, I like using the smashy thing. And for somebody else to say, okay, the volume of mashed potatoes I'm making, I'm putting them in the blender because I don't have time, right? Like to talk about the whys and wherefores in a way that lets us be analytical about it and interested in other people's findings and results, as opposed to what? No, we always do it this way, or this is the process, or this is the procedure. Fair enough. So, so that is where we're going with the winding and yarn management of stuff. Is we're going to find people have different experiences of yarn management processes, and there are going to be people who are going to say, no, I'm using a ball winder for this. No, I'm using some other kind of thing. And I think, well, so what I've found is that when I tried to control this particular week of things really rigorously, I had a lot of pushback. And when I left people with the objective, I had a lot of invention, and a lot of people found problems and then brought problems to class, and then we all learned more from it. So that's where, yeah, I'm not kidding. We really are spending, the bulk of this week on yarn management and winding balls. I know. It sounds like what, but trial and error have brought us to this point. So there we are. So Elise just said, I tend to use tools for a lot of cooking because I cook large. And Martha would tell you that she doesn't use a lot of automation for her cooking because she tends to cook large. So it's really an interesting whole thing. So yeah, so I'm hoping to get lots of interesting yarn management problems out of this week.
I ran into my first one.
You did?
Yes. So I got to the end of my spindles, and like, you end up with one with a little bit more than the other one. And I did the bracelet plying and ended up with a gigantic mess of trying to figure out the flow from my wrist to the ball without getting a tangle and getting that join to sort of just stay together long enough to get wound into a ball.
So we're definitely going to be talking about that technique on Wednesday. That technique is it is a way of winding. Let me get some different yarn.
It basically took me as long to wind the last, 20 feet as it did the rest of the ball.
Yeah. So if you were spinning for production and you were going to be spinning, a dozen spindles full of yarn, right? And you were going to be spinning a dozen spindles full of the same yarn, you would just not do that, right? Like you would just say, okay, now I'm just going to join on to, I was winding my double-stranded ball and I had some left on one spindle. Great. I'm just going to start spinning on that spindle and fill it up because I'm making more of the same yarn. Now, let's say you're not making more of the same yarn, and you want to use that last little bit and you don't plan to make more of that yarn. Well, then in that case, you can wind a double-stranded yarn source to try and get that in there. And that is done sometimes, occasionally, by Andean people And the way I actually like to do it doesn't involve the method that my godmother showed my dad one day in the yard. Nope, that is a hard to see yarn. So, and then they're gonna come up here and call me for lunch and be like, okay, you just have. So this was your whole plan with this office, is just to have piles of yarn all over the place, right? So
That's what my office looks like.
bad yarn hygiene. Okay, so what I actually like to do is this. You see how I've secured one end there. All right, now I got to the other end, hypothetically. All right, I've got 2 dangly ends and I've got this figure 8 in there, and then I just scrunch that down, stick my hand right in there, okay? Now I've got these, and then I just, I can go from there to winding my double-stranded ball. So that's the one I like to use.
I think I ran into the problem because I put the bracelet on the same wrist I was winding the ball with, and then I had a too short of a run.
That could be, but yeah. So there's a whole lot of this. There's a whole lot of this stuff, right? So that was pretty simple, right? That didn't involve a lot of this other stuff. So so yeah, there's a bunch of this kind of stuff. The other one is another one. I'm just going to stick one end in my watch band because that's an easy way to track it for now. But I'll stick one end. The other one is, people are like, and then you wrap it 800 times, and then you do all the other stuff, right? So you can go like that, and then around, and like that, and then around, and like that, and then around, and like that, and then around. Okay, see what I'm doing here, right? Like that, and then around, and like that, and then around. And then and then I just pull this off, and I've already got a bracelet. So anyway, you'll meet a lot of gringo pliers who will tell you that there's one true way that you're supposed to do these kinds of things, and I think they're all full of crap. Because a lot of people, yeah, you have to watch how tight you get that. Less so when you wind it so that you're pulling it forward off your finger. A lot of people like wind it so that it pulls this back. Why would you do that? I don't know. A lot of people do that because that was a diagram that was in and so a lot of people go like this, right? You see how that's the opposite, right? So now your cross and your figure 8 is on the back of your hand instead of the way that I like to do it if I'm going to do it with the cross on the front of my hand. So now, oh my God, how do I get this off here? I've tortured. Why would you do that? Right? So what is the advantage of the figure 8 versus just winding a continuous loop? Every time that you have a cross you're controlling the yarn and keeping it from tangling. And so we're gonna prove that probably in office hours on Wednesday. Yeah. So Elise says, I've also ended up with, and I'm sticking this in my watch band because normally I would just wrap it around here if I wasn't wearing a watch. I've ended up with a crab claw, which means I just need 2 little yarn in my bracelet. Yeah, but you can also just do this, right? Do you see that? Look, I've got some on there. Okay, now I'm going to go like this. Now I'm back to it. Yeah. So now I've got a 3 bracelet. And look, these little crosses actually keep it from tangling. So they mean that it's only going to feed off one thing at a time. But what this is this is just a way of getting at both ends of the same piece of yarn, keeping it relatively under control. You know, why has that never occurred to you? Well, it's obvious to everybody in the Andes, right? So there's a bunch of these things, right? Crosses control where the twist can migrate, and crosses mean that you're only going to feed off a loop at a time. They control the sequence of things, so those loops don't dive and get buried and all that kind of thing. So, yep, all of this kind of stuff. So the story of how that bracelet trick came to be called Andean plying is that my dad wrote up a quick one-page article for Spinoff in, like, I don't know, 1991, maybe it was, about this quick technique that he had documented my godmother doing. And the subject of that was an Andean plying technique. You know, like if I said, you know, a parallel parking technique, right? Or something, you know, with like that, right? Like, so he wrote up an Andean plying technique. And then a bunch of readers of Spinoff decided, this then is how all yarn is plied in the Andes. And my dad was like, no, this is just a thing that people do for yarn management in the Andes sometimes. And they were like, Andean plying, you say? And he's like, no, I did not say, right? And so this progressed and progressed and progressed. And coming up on 30 years that I've been arguing about this too. And like one of the things that really frustrates me about it is somebody will say, okay, but with this bracelet winding method in the Andes, what do they do when they're going to apply like an entire spindle full of yarn? And I'm like, well, they don't use it for that. Everybody doesn't use it, and it's not really a thing. And they're like, no, but it's an Andean plying. It's Andean plying. So what do they do when they do this in the Andes? And I'm like, but they don't do this in the Andes. And they're like, yeah, but since it's Andean plying, they do this in the Andes. And I'm like, okay, but that's actually, no, that's not a thing. And then people are like, well, aren't you a bitchy yarn cop? I'm like, yes, I am. That is me. Also, haha, cop, I see what you said there, what you did there. Anyway, I actually earlier this week, whatever, had a whole thing about this. Had a whole thing about this, and ended up leaving the last of the sort of general population yarn groups that I was in on social media. And that is when I decided that I am going to call equipment-based plying methods gringo plying for forever. And then a lot of people got really upset about that. And I'm like, what? Gringos do it. And anyway, like, yeah, but not all gringos, not only gringos. And I'm like, I don't care. Anyway, I do actually care. So I was, you know, having an internet slap fight to prove a point, I guess. But no, but in sincerity, there's a lot to it. There's a lot that's powerful in that whole yarn management paradigm, right? In that whole school of thought of working with all that kind of thing. And you know, and so I like, it's worth talking about, and it's worth knowing, but it's also worth understanding that we're talking about vegetable peelers versus knives versus what kind of knife versus how do you like a chef's knife and what do you think a chef's knife should look like. And you know, so there's a lot of it depends. And like I say, my objective in spinning 1 through 4 is to make room for all of these preferential things, because I am not here training a bunch of low-paid wage slaves to do things exactly to my specification using the exact process. And you know what, even if I was, right? Like even if I was training minimum wage workers to do some sort of minimum wage task, there's still a point where I, as a boss, am not that interested in micromanaging how they do it. Like I had an employee at my brick and mortar studio one time that wanted me to tell her how she was supposed to clean the toilet. And I said that it didn't matter to me so long as these points of toilet cleanliness were achieved, right? Like that I did not have a first do this and then do that, right? Like, so, you know, so clean the toilet, make sure that you clean up under the rim, you do these things. And she said, yeah, but do you want me to clean under the rim first or after or what? And I was like, I feel like that's up to you, right? I'm not going to micromanage your toilet cleaning. I don't have a 5 steps to the perfectly clean toilet process. And this blew my mind as a boss, right? And it made me realize that that when I had, as an employee, thought about what I wanted in a boss and then set out to be that kind of boss, I had not adequately considered that as Jen just said, some people really require specificity. That this employee was really uncomfortable not having a specific procedure that she was supposed to use for cleaning the toilet. And so then I realized, well, now I've got to develop toilet cleaning protocols. And then that went further, and then this extended to other kinds of things. And then I mean, this was a whole lot of different things. And Elise says, or some people have been punished for not doing things right. And so what is the purpose of the specificity? And so all of these kinds of things. And then this sort of shifted my perspective a lot about who I was looking for in terms of employees to hire and dealing with a lot of this. But it caused me to understand that a lot of people, especially people in lower paying jobs, have been really traumatized by a lot of this sort of nickel and dime BS, right? And so people have been really traumatized by having somebody say, well, you have to do it exactly this way. And so why this is relevant to spinning is because a lot of the documentation that we actually have, that's written documentation about how to spin and what yarn should be like and what the procedures and processes are, was in fact written for people in that job situation, right? So these are people who are being trained to perform a repetitive task without adequate training to do it on an artisanal and trust-based basis, right? So these are people who are being put to work who don't want to be doing this, who don't enjoy getting into it, and who don't have the latitude for whatever reason to go independently decide how they want to wind a ball of yarn. So that's, when we look at the historical documents that come from mills or that come from a lot of different guidelines for how do you do some of these processes, that's really what they are, right? Is that they are a manual on scrubbing the toilet that's going to make it so that so the boss doesn't yell at you. So those are not the yarn production manuals that I think are relevant to our objective of enjoying the process and wanting to be able to make the yarn that we want to make. So yeah, so that's where we're at. So questions on the homework, which really is just do all this yarn management stuff and get into trouble. Make paired singles balls of yarn. You can also make tripled and quadrupled, and think about processes for those. And I'm expecting you to get into trouble. So for instance, do you wind a double-stranded ball and then add a third strand to that, winding again? Do you wind 2 double-stranded balls and then wind those together into a 4-stranded ball? Must you wind everything together at the same time? Find out. Yeah. Yeah, the homework is to try and get into trouble. And hopefully fun. Hopefully fun trouble. And, I mean, we're still going to talk about it on Discord, and we're still going to have office hours on Wednesday at the appointed time, which is noon Eastern. And yeah, all right, Kat, sure, sure. Bust me on this, but part of the point is, do you find yourself making tool solutions or process solutions? If you don't wind them all together, you're going to have some twist that isn't in all the strands evenly, I think. It's only one way to be sure. Do the science. Yep. So yeah, so but we're also going to be finding out, this is also a way to assess what we like and feel confident about liking what we like. Oh, how even is the twist in all your singles to begin with? Well, do you think your winding method is going to play a factor? Oh man, I wonder if Dan's gonna just like make tools. I already think I leaked the advanced information that I'm gonna be making some tools, and I'm gonna be showing the tools that I made. I'm looking at all of that stuff too. But yep. All right, unless the barometer drops on me and my hands falls, right? So your hand is theoretically the same size. Sure, but you're gonna have a different number of wraps of yarn around your hand when it reaches a certain thickness, depending on the thickness and consistency of your yarn too, right? Why can't there be simple answers? Because this is spinning too with Abby Franquemont. This is the Franquemont method, and we make sure there are no simple answers. The simple answers are for someone else. Please laugh. Anyway, rewinding could even out the twist. So yeah, like I say, there's actually way more here than it seems like there's going to be. Stick spindles on both sides of the chair. Well, does it need to be both sides of the chair? Why? Oh man, do these need to be far apart from each other or close together? Or, yep. So anyway, a lot of problems to be had. There are a lot of problems to be had here. And what I found was when I tried to get really specific about do it this way, try this way presents that problem, this way poses another problem, I found out that I got a lot of pushback for one thing, and that people did not find the things that I expected that they would find. And so I found that it was generally more productive if I let people actually experience the problems that they had for themselves, and then we addressed them, if that makes sense. All right. All right. Cool. So I'm gonna call this a day, and see you all on Discord, and see you all also on Wednesday.
Thank you.
Thank you.